For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 741 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 152, House Resolution 741, resolved that during further consideration of the bill, H.R. 4078, to provide that no agency may take any significant regulatory action until the unemployment rate is equal to or less than 6.0%, in Section 102B, strike employment and insert unemployment.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be amended by the amendment I have placed at the desk.
Is there an objection?
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the right to object.
The gentleman is recognized on his objection.
Mr. Speaker, I think we should have an explanation here. The clerk read the technical language, but as I understand it, what happened was that the bill that we were voting on yesterday and we'll vote on today has an error and gets employment and unemployment confused. And this is a bill that would correct the error in the bill that we debated yesterday. So I wonder, why do we now need a unanimous consent? Are we correcting the correction? It's the old Latin phrase, quis custodiet ipsos custodes, who guards the guardians? I guess today the question is, who corrects the correctors? If you would explain why we had to get a bill to make a correction and now we have to have a unanimous consent apparently to correct the correction. What is the error?
And I appreciate his asking the question because it gives us an opportunity to do a mea culpa. That's my ability to quote Latin this morning in response to the gentleman from Massachusetts. Yes, there was a very minor error in the rule that was passed day before yesterday, and that was that two letters, the letters U, the letter N, were left off of one word in
If the gentleman, I would take back my time briefly to say, if that's the case, if the letters U and N were left out, knowing the animosity on that side to UN, I can understand why psychologically that would have happened. I yield again to the gentlewoman.
Then in preparing the correction for that, inadvertently, two numbers were reversed in the number for the resolution. So I don't have a quote from Murphy's Law, a Latin quote from Murphy's Law, but I will say that it appears as though in the attempt to make one correction, unfortunately, another mistake was made, and we would like to move on in as expeditious a fashion as we possibly can, because we know our colleagues and we are looking forward to a weekend of work at home.
I do think this is more than simply a double error. It's a matter of haste. And it is relevant because, and I would just take exception to the gentleman saying, well, it's important that we get this done right away. I think, frankly, the problem has been that in these past couple of years, and to some extent before, we haven't met frequently enough. I understand people would like to get back to the districts they represent, but I think that this is emblematic of our not having enough time to deal with it. This is what happens when you try to do too much too soon. People on the other side were critical of some of the legislation we passed. Financial reform bill, they said it was too encompassing. But it went through a much more thorough process than this very controversial, even more comprehensive bill we're dealing with today. This is a bill that we're dealing with today that deals with every single subject that comes before this Congress, because it would put severe restrictions on the adoption of regulations about financial reform, about health, about the environment, about occupational safety, about transportation safety. And yeah, it is a problem when you try to do too much too soon.
I would like the House to understand where we are procedurally. It's my understanding that the House yesterday spent the better part of the day debating a bill which said that regulation should not take effect until unemployment hits 94%. Is that the gentleman's understanding?
Apparently that was what was in the bill because, and they said it was a typo that the words, the letters U and N were left out. I will have to say there's certain equality here. The day before yesterday the mistake was letters, today it's numbers. I suppose tomorrow it'll be astrological signs.
Then it's my understanding we find ourselves at the present moment in a situation where the correcting rule that would have fixed the word unemployment to be employment itself has an error in it.
The error was in the first substantive page. This was not buried somewhere deeply. So just to reinforce the point that a lot of people didn't read the bill, that error was very much in the
The gentleman
early part.
would yield that my understanding was in the fourth paragraph of the
the
bill.
first substantive one. And if the gentleman wants me to, I would yield to the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, we are all human beings. A mistake was made, and then in attempting to correct the mistake, an extraordinarily minor other mistake was made. As was quoted this morning by one of our colleagues, our time is very precious. Don't waste it by playing gotcha games.
To make a plea for bipartisanship with this excessively partisan bill that is being put through in such a procedurally inappropriate fashion, with major concerns about every aspect of the federal government given 10 minutes of debate at 9 and 10 o'clock at night to be voted on 20 at once. No, that's a mistake. Secondly, as the gentleman from New Jersey and I pointed out, and it is not simply that a mistake was made, but it's a mistake that would easily have been caught early if people had read the bill. And I stress this because when we did some of the other legislation, financial reform, health care, there was constant repetition of the argument on the Republican side. You haven't read the bill, nobody's read the bill. Well, you haven't read this bill, apparently, Mr. Speaker.
The House should review
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw my unanimous consent request.
The bill before us here, referencing H.R. 783, is the Thomasina E. Jordan Indian Tribes of Virginia Federal Recognition Act of 2011. This act extends federal recognition to several tribes in Virginia and establishes their relationship with the federal government. The only problem now with the discussion of this bill is that the corresponding change indicated in the resolution doesn't really make sense as up to this bill. Again, this is a bill that establishes several tribes, and yet a corresponding change is being made to the definition of the unemployment rate, which I can't find in the bill. So I'd like to ask my colleague, Ms. Fox, where in the bill is the reference to the unemployment rate that is being changed in this resolution?
The gentleman is referencing the wrong bill. As the gentleman would see, we are dealing with, he was quoting the wrong resolution. We're dealing with changes to House Resolution 783.
Reclaiming my time, again, looking at the Thomas Registry, H.R. 783 is called the Thomasina E. Jordan Indian Tribes of Virginia Federal
Mr. Speaker, I believe...
And now it's unclear whether we're talking about a tribal recognition bill or a non-existent bill, a bill that has not been introduced. If there is no HRES 783, we are referencing a non-existent bill, unless it references H.R. 783 from a previous session. But in any event, these matters need to be corrected before we can proceed in any manner.
Mr. Speaker, we are not dealing with a House bill. We're dealing with House Resolution 783.
I just want to ask the gentlelady from North Carolina, what is House Resolution 783? We're having trouble locating it.
That does not exist, Mr. Speaker.